Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. Emily, do you want to go ahead and go to the next slide? Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Matt Schmidt. I am the Director of Programs at the Lab for Analytic Sciences in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is going to be an information session around the summer conference on applied data science that LAS is hosting next year. The information in this session is going to be primarily targeted to academic faculty and industry professionals who are interested in attending the summer conference, or SCADS, next year. SCADS also has student attendees and attendees from the government. There will be separate information sessions and application processes for those attendees. So some of the information we talk about today is going to be relevant, but for the more relevant information, if you're in one of those other groups, maybe just wait until we have those information sessions. But if you're an academic researcher or an industry professional interested in participating in SCADS next year, you're in the right place. So next slide. So just a quick overview of what I'll be talking about today. Give a quick introduction to the Lab for Analytic Sciences. That'll lead into an overview of the summer conference, or SCADS, with us talking a little bit about the technical areas, the grand challenge that motivates the SCADS work. I'll give you some idea of what to expect if you are an attendee from faculty or industry. And then if you're interested, we'll go through the application process. If anyone has any questions during the talk, feel free to make use of the Q&A feature in Zoom. We have a number of people who are monitoring that during the talk. And then at the end, I'll be able to answer any questions live. There's still outstanding questions at the end of the talk. Okay. Okay, so the Lab for Analytic Sciences, or LAS, is a collaboration between North Carolina State University and the National Security Agency. LAS was created in 2013 with the idea of bringing together researchers from industry, from academia, and from government to work on data science and analytics problems relevant to the intelligence community. We've been situated on Centennial Campus at NC State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, for the past 10 years. And really, the goal of LAS's work is to enable research projects that focus on research relevant to or prototypes that address particular challenges and particular applications in the intelligence community. All right, and so a lot of the projects at LAS focus on outcomes that could be transitioned into an operational setting. Next slide. So the Summer Conference on Applied Data Science is a summer conference that LAS has hosted since 2022. And really, SCADS is essentially LAS in miniature. So the goal of SCADS is to produce research and prototypes that are relevant to the U.S. intelligence community. It's to focus on data science research and understanding some of the latest technologies and understanding how they might apply to those challenges. We work with students, faculty, industry, and government researchers during SCADS, except we do so over the course of 2 months. So SCADS is an 8-week conference in Raleigh, North Carolina. We bring all of the attendees to NC State's campus for a fairly immersive, collaborative environment. And then the goal is, by the end of those 8 weeks, we've made progress on the research questions and the challenge problems for that year. This is a setup fairly similar for those of you who might be familiar to things like SCAMP, the summer camp on applied math problems, or SCALE, the summer camp on language. And those have a very similar bent, but there's a couple things that differentiate SCADS from those types of summer camps. So one is we work primarily in a unclassified environment. So most of the research and most of the attendees will be unclassified and the attendees will be uncleared, though there will be some attendees from the intelligence community with clearances and things like that. But there is no requirement for attendees to have any sort of clearances. The other thing that kind of separates SCADS is that in addition to the focus on the data science research areas, we have a thread that connects our SCADS from year to year that we call our multi-year grand challenge. And if you go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what that is. So the SCADS grand challenge is motivated by some of the discussions we had when we were kind of setting up SCADS around the concept of, could we create a tailored daily report for all knowledge workers or all intelligence analysts? And what we mean by, what is a tailored daily report for intelligence analysts? It's helpful to kind of use the example of, for those of you who are familiar with the President's Daily Brief, right? So the President's Daily Brief is a document that the United States intelligence community produces for the United States president every morning to kind of summarize the intelligence products that are relevant to the president that day, right? So this can be things that maybe happened over the past 24 hours. These could be intelligence products that are relevant to the agenda of the president for that day. Or these could be, background information that may help them understand an ongoing or evolving conflict that's relevant that day, right? This is a product that leverages information from across the United States intelligence community. It is something that, an entire office of dozens or, hundreds of analysts work on producing every day. And it's very useful to the president. It's been produced since President Truman, way back in the 50s. And every president kind of tailors it to their specific needs, to their specific way of consuming information. So when we were talking about a grand challenge for SCADS, one of the ideas that generated a lot of interest was, what if we could actually produce something like the President's Daily Brief, but for every intelligence analyst? A couple things, kind of immediately come to mind from that type of challenge is, one, well, that would be really useful, right? Like, it would be really useful for an intelligence analyst to know what other, artifacts are relevant to them into what they're trying to accomplish and what their mission is for the day, and things like that. It's also fairly obvious that the way that the PDB is generated is not going to work to be able to generate that for every intelligence analyst, right? That's not a system that necessarily scales to that size of a community. And so that kind of motivates a lot of interesting questions in the data science realm of, how do you automate something like the generation of a tailored daily report? Okay, so the next slide. So when we're talking about SCADS 2024, right, and we're talking about what technical work will we actually be doing next summer, it falls in a number of different areas, right? So a lot of the technical work, or one thread of the technical work, will be on actually building out prototype solutions for a tailored daily report, right? What last year's SCADS started to implement in a number of different ways was looking at available technology and available capabilities to see if could you build a system that could produce something like a tailored daily report. right? And so the opportunity that SCADS affords is people who are interested in building some of these prototype solutions can very quickly build, get feedback on, what that prototype produces in terms of value for end users, right? We have a lot of analysts who are going to be participating in SCADS. They can give quick feedback about what's useful, what's not useful, and then people can iterate, really trying to get to the overarching question of what should a tailored daily report actually look like, right? So a lot of the technical work next year is kind of continuing in this vein of, can we prototype potential solutions? Can we get feedback on those solutions? And can we iterate and evolve towards what a tailored daily report should look like, right? Go back one slide. So in addition to that, those sort of prototype efforts, another thread and another vein of the work at SCADS is going to be about addressing the research questions that are motivated by that grand challenge, right? And so there are three research areas that we're going to be focusing on for next summer. One is in the area of summarization or content summarization. One is in the area of recommendation systems. And the third is in the area of human-computer interaction, right? And I'll talk a little bit more in detail about what each of those areas mean and how they are motivated and how they align with the grand challenge. So if those are areas that you're interested in potentially researching, again, that's another main thread of what we actually do as part of the SCADS work. There's also a number of sort of cross-cutting areas that tie into each of these research areas, right? So things like knowledge representation can affect, what type of recommender systems are possible, how, knowledge is presented to humans, what type of summarization is possible, those types of things. So there's a number of research areas that would be relevant because they tie into the three main focus areas. And so those are also things that we're looking for attendees who might have expertise in those areas as well, right? So knowledge representation, the data sets we might be using to evaluate and test out some of the solutions, all those things are kind of cross-cutting research areas as well, okay? But to get into the three research areas a little bit more specifically, we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so one of the focus areas of research we have for next year is in summarization, right? So obviously there's been a huge explosion in the past year or so around things like large language models and their ability to produce fluent text summaries and fluent generated text, essentially. And we'd really like to look into ways of leveraging those advances to summarize information in the ways that a tailored daily report needs to summarize that, right? That type of goal leads to a lot of interesting research questions, right? And these would all be research questions that we would be interested in potentially investigating next summer, right? So looking at ways that how do you produce a summary that an analyst could actually perceive as trustworthy, can actually trust that you're summarizing the information accurately and not needing to go, drill down into the source data to verify that, right? How do you enable citations in those summaries so that even if they don't trust it, they could go into the source data and see that this is something that's coming from, raw intelligence data. How do you tailor a summary to a particular user, right? What feedback are you actually gathering from the user so that summaries provide the information that's most relevant to them, right? And how do you do that in a way that avoids biasing them such that you give an incomplete or an inaccurate picture of the underlying information, right? All of those are kind of aspects of questions that kind of come out when you apply these summarization techniques in a intelligence analysis domain, right? And those would all be things that, you know, if you're interested in questions like this, you would make a great potential attendee at SCADS. Similarly, there's a number of questions that come out of how you do this summarization problem, given the type of input data that we often see in the intelligence domain, right? So one aspect is much of the data that we would like to summarize for intelligence analysts would be multilingual. So how do you produce summaries when the underlying data is in the non-native language, right? Additionally, how do you produce summaries when the data is not itself text, right? How do you summarize video data and image data and audio data in addition to text? And so how do you handle that sort of multimodal input data? Those types of concerns are very apparent when you consider kind of the application and the grand challenge that we're addressing in SCADS, right? So again, these are just sort of examples of problems that we would be interested in. But the way that the research kind of works at SCADS is that we use these examples and we work with the attendees to kind of flesh out what are the specific research questions that that attendee is going to be investigating during the summer, right? So if you look at this and you say, that's exactly the research question I'm interested in, I would like to work on that one, that's great. If you're looking at this and say, I would actually like to investigate a research question that is related but somewhat different from how you're talking about it, that's also perfectly fine, and something that we kind of talk through when we get to the application and interview session. But again, these are just examples of things that we might be interested in. Okay. Okay, the next area around recommendation systems, again, this is really looking at it from what a tailored daily report is trying to do, right? It's trying to survey all of the potential information that could be relevant and find, you know, what is the information that is most relevant or most newly relevant to a user when they're creating the tailored daily report, right? So recommender technology has been looking at this problem in different facets for a while now. And so things that we could leverage there around, you know, considerations of the type of feedback that people are providing the recommendations and the tailored daily report system, so that what is being presented to the user is actually the things that are relevant, right? How does the user provide feedback to the system such that it gets more relevant results, right? Are there things that are beyond, you know, the traditional clicks or views or likes of an information that can help give the user more control, right? Because I think when you're thinking about this from an intelligence analyst perspective, they may want to have a greater degree of control over these recommendations than you might over your Facebook feed or your Amazon recommendations. They may actually want to try and get, you know, a certain set of recommendations because they're running, you know, a type of analysis where they're looking for conflicting evidence, or they're looking for, you know, a particular type of evidence that they wouldn't normally want to see, right? So how do you give the user that type of control? Additionally, you know, looking at it from not just recommendations, but like the user's perspective of those recommendations, questions around explainability, what sort of metrics you're using to evaluate those recommendations would be interesting. We have the same sort of multilingual, multimodal concerns that we had for the summarization problems are also going to cause issues for recommendation systems, right? So how do we address those? And then last but totally not least are any sort of scalability concerns, right? How do we get these types of techniques to be applicable to the amount of data that you would want to consider for a TLDR, right? So those are a number of examples for recommendation systems focus areas. Again, if any of these things are sounding interesting or relevant to the work that you're interested in, we would be interested in talking with you. Okay. All right. The third area is around human-computer interaction, right? So the goal for SCADS is we really want to understand what a tailored daily report system should look like, right? How do we produce value for the end users? And leveraging knowledge from the human-computer interaction domain is one of the ways that we can see as a mechanism to get there, right? So there's a lot of questions that have come up. We've actually looked at HCI since the beginning of SCADS, questions around what sort of visual communication mechanisms do you use to allow the user to interact with the data, to interact with the system, right? How is the system communicating the information visually? How is the system enabling the user to gain an accurate perception of the trustworthiness of the data, right? That gets to questions around how do you communicate confidence and how do you communicate uncertainty in the data. It's also, trying to frame the question not as how do I get the user to trust the data, right? Because sometimes the data that we're getting is not trustworthy, right? It may be inaccurate in the analysis. There may be some deceptiveness to it. And so we want to make sure that the user is actually has an accurate perception of trustworthiness, not just overly trusting of the data as well. How do you enable the analyst to sense make on the data, right? How do you enable the analyst to put pieces of information together in the report? Those are, again, kind of example questions from a grand challenge perspective, right? Thinking about the metrics we would be using to evaluate a TLDR or a tailored daily report. What sort of things should we be measuring? Not just accuracy and not just, how many things did they click on, but what sort of, usability metrics do we need to be considering? What sort of ways do we need to be measuring the system beyond, the narrow automation focus, right? And then finally, thinking about how do we leverage some of the HCI techniques to elicit what a user finds valuable and how a user might use a tailored daily report, right? Because again, we're trying to build into the prototype systems, a mechanism to iterate, a mechanism to figure out, here's what this could look like, what should it look like, kind of thing. And so are there ways to set up studies? Are there ways to set up evaluation so that we get more useful information from those interactions? Okay, so that's a lot of the technical areas that we're interested in next year. And so again, if those are interesting to you and you're interested in potentially, coming to Raleigh for a summer, we would love to hear from you. We would love to have you apply. And so I want to kind of quickly talk through, if you are an attendee at SCADS, what you should expect in terms of, how does the summer go? What does a day look like in terms of, an attendee's perspective? So as I mentioned, SCADS attendees are going to be working on one or both of, the thread around prototyping solutions or addressing research questions, right? And most attendees are going to be working on both, right? They're going to be working on research questions. They're going to be involved with the efforts that are building out prototypes. And those two things are not going to be separate. They're going to be very, very much involved. And so there's going to be a lot of collaboration between those two types of efforts. But most of the work that people are going to be doing is going to fall in one or both of those buckets. Okay. For academic faculty and industry professionals, we really look to those attendees to serve three different roles. Some combination of these three is really what it usually ends up being, but we look for the faculty and the industry attendees to serve as leads for some of the research and development efforts, right? We're looking for people who have the ability to take research questions and design research plans and actually lead a research effort to try and get to a useful result with respect to that particular research question, right? We're looking for people with the experience of building out prototypes to be able to lead the development effort so that we can produce something usable, something demoable, incorporate feedback, and actually iterate. So there's an opportunity there to kind of lead individual efforts within the SCADS workshop. You don't have to necessarily be a lead on every effort, though, because a lot of what we're looking for from our attendees is to bring their subject matter expertise that they can apply to a variety of efforts, right? So a lot of times you'll be collaborating with people who are leading a different effort, giving them advice, giving them consultation to try and help steer them in a direction that is more fruitful and more potentially impactful, right? So if you are a expert in recommendation systems, you may be working on a particular research question relevant to recommendation systems, while also meeting with a team that's building out an end-to-end prototype that incorporates some components, some capabilities of recommendation systems, giving them advice on, how those things might be applied. Right. So that's something that a lot of previous attendees have served that role as well. And then finally, we do look for our academic faculty and industry professionals to serve something as a mentor for a lot of our junior participants, right? So we will have graduate students who are part of SCADS. We will have some attendees who are very early in their careers and are looking for some professional mentorship. And so if there's things that you can contribute in terms of working with your collaborators, working with some of the more junior participants in terms of mentorship, that's something that we like to see come out of the conference, and something we do ask of our academic and industry attendees as well. All right. So your role will be, different from other attendees. Everyone kind of has their own individual role, but it'll probably be some combination of those three dimensions. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so that's a lot of what we as the SCADS organizers expect of our academic and industry participants. So turning it around for a second, what should our academic and industry participants expect from us? So the first thing, right, we can talk about is this is a compensated position. Our academic faculty industry participants do receive a stipend for their participation of around $21,000. That works a little differently depending on if you're a 9-month employee like most academic faculty, or if you're a 12-month employee like most industry professionals. And so that would be something we would work out with you individually of how that would work. But generally, that's the level of compensation that we have for our faculty and industry attendees. Additionally, if you are not local to Raleigh, right, and that's defined as being more than 35 miles away from NC State's campus, we can provide for your lodging and travel during the SCADS conference. So we have agreements with hotels in the area where we can pay for your lodging. Additionally, if you would like to just reserve like an Airbnb or a rental house for the summer, we can provide you a lodging stipend. I know that works better for some people with families or pets that they're bringing and things like that. And so we can work with you to kind of figure out the best situation there. And then as far as travel, we will pay for people to travel to the conference at the beginning of the summer and back to their main place of residence at the end of the summer. But we aren't able to pay for like if people are going home for a weekend during the middle of the summer. So that's just kind of the way that works. But we do provide compensation. We do realize this is a significant amount of time that we are asking for, and we try to compensate people accordingly. Those are all the monetary benefits. Some of the professional benefits of what you can expect from SCADS. These are things that we've gotten when we interview past SCADS attendees, right? So one thing you can expect is that SCADS is a very concentrated environment, and so most of the attendees will be able to make rapid progress on the research questions that they're working on, right? You're going to be in an environment with around 40 to 50 people who are working on very similar problems, who are interested in very relevant topics. And so a lot of the collaboration that happens can lead to, really rapid progress on the research questions. The expertise set that we're looking for, we're trying to build a lot of diversity into that expertise, right? So we have, people with expertise in human-computer interaction. We have people with expertise in machine learning. We also, have people with expertise in psychology, or people with expertise in intelligence applications. Not just the traditional data science type of domains, because those are kind of people who are really focused on, how would this apply? How does this actually interact with the user? And so being able to talk to those people every day for an entire summer, a lot of participants found that very beneficial, because not only does that help their work while they're at SCADS, that can lead to research questions and ideas for work beyond SCADS, beyond the 8 weeks that you're actually here in Raleigh. And then likewise, we bring in a lot of people who are either current or have experience being intelligence analysts, right? So people who have practical experience, can think about solutions from a user perspective. And that's an opportunity a lot of our attendees don't often have, of applying their research and getting feedback from people who might use their research for a particular application, right? So those are some of the technical benefits to your, technical work beyond just the 8 weeks at SCADS. Okay.
Voyagers have had to use machine tools to fashion the more delicate.
So as far as the actual summer schedule, right, again, most of the work will be done during the 8 weeks in June and July. And so those 8 weeks are kind of broken down into a first week where there's a number of introductory talks, really focusing on helping people find what problem they're going to work on for the summer. The weeks 2 through 7 are really about enabling people and giving people the time to do the work. And then week 8, we're really looking at documenting that work and sharing it out in a summer end symposium, where we invite a lot of the stakeholders for SCADS and a lot of the people who might be interested in transitioning some of the results into an operational setting. All right. So for June and July, you should really expect to be in Raleigh working primarily on SCADS work. There's a couple things that go on outside of June and July, right? So in May, we hold a couple onboarding sessions virtually, so people can participate remotely, really just kind of introducing them through some of the logistics of how the summer will work, making sure they have an introduction into the efforts and the problems and some of the potential collaborators, so that when they arrive in Raleigh in June, they have, you know, the necessary introduction and onboarding. Similarly, once people are done in week 8, we do produce a technical report that covers all of the research and all of the ideas that were produced during SCADS. And so we often will ask people, you know, have the technical report done by week 8, but if you need, you know, additional time to edit, that usually can be done in August, again, remotely. It doesn't require people to be in person. So that's primarily what the actual SCADS event involves. It's primarily in June and July, with a couple virtual things in May and August. I'll also mention that in August, essentially as week 9 of SCADS, there will be a hackathon that'll be held up in the cleared facility at LAS. That'll be limited to a subset of the cleared invitees only. And so most of our academic and industry attendees wouldn't be attending that, because most of them probably will not have the necessary clearances. But some of the attendees at SCADS will be participating in the high side hackathon. And so that's something that, you know, people should be aware of, you know, is also something can be SCADS related happening in August. Next slide. Okay, so that's a lot of dates. That's a lot of kind of figures and things like that. Trying to give people a sense of what they can expect as a SCADS attendee. I'll go through what a typical day looks like during weeks 2 through 7 of SCADS, right? During the time where you're actually working on the technical work, trying to make progress on a particular research question or development effort, right? So during weeks 2 through 7, you will primarily be in person for the majority of the day on NC State's campus. So every attendee will have a desk, every attendee will have like an office space that they can come in and do work. It'll be in the room with most of the other SCADS attendees. So it'll be very easy to kind of work with and collaborate with the other attendees. Every day we may have a particular external speaker or a learning session with one of the other SCADS attendees about a technical topic, or what we call bull sessions, where attendees are kind of asked to bring sort of work in progress or sort of half-baked ideas to kind of get quick feedback on things that they're thinking about. So you may have one of those during the day, but primarily most of the day is going to be dedicated to either working with a small group, right? So we have groups of SCADS attendees who organize around a particular problem or a particular effort, or individual technical work, right? You're actually doing the analysis, you're doing the data preparation yourself, kind of working at your desk individually. So the majority of the day is going to be kind of up to you how you spend it working with collaborators or by yourself on the technical work. All right. Additionally, we realize that, you know, we're asking for a sizable amount of your time during the summer. Many of you have commitments outside of SCADS during the summer, right? Faculty may have grad students that they're working with that didn't participate in SCADS. Industry participants may have projects they're assigned to that are, on top of them being able to be at SCADS. And so we don't require people to be working, 8 to 5 exclusively on SCADS research, right? If attendees need to take an hour or two to join a virtual discussion with, people from their home organization to work on stuff that is not at all SCADS related, that's perfectly acceptable. It's the way that we can allow people, to work here during the summer, but also stay connected back to their home organization. That said, we do expect that the majority of their time while they're here is going to be dedicated towards SCADS. So that's most of the workday. And then after the workday, an attendee may go out to dinner with other attendees. There may be a, self-organized, social event at a bar or at the hotel or something like that. We're going to primarily leave it up to the attendees to figure out what they want to do outside of the workday. But in the past, that usually has led to a lot of the attendees themselves kind of organizing social events outside of SCADS, right? And that's primarily what you can expect, right? For those weeks 2 through 7, you'll have a lot of freedom to work on what you want to work on. You'll have the ability, to stay connected with your home organization. And then, you'll be meeting and working with a lot of the other attendees to kind of work on a lot of the problems collaboratively. Okay, so the main thing I wanted to convey today is that if you are interested in participating in SCADS, we need you to go ahead and fill out the application. So we're going to ask people to fill out the online application. We will then review those applications and invite a subset of applicants to do interviews. And then based on those interviews, we'll go ahead and extend offers for participating in SCADS next year. So as far as filling out the applications, we are going to have an early application deadline. So if you can fill out and complete your application by, November 3rd, then we can get you into the early application process and get you a decision quicker than if you're later in the application. But early application deadline is November 3rd. And then the final application deadline will be January 12th. So if you can't get your application in by the 3rd, you can still apply. We will still have spots available. We just need you to apply by January 12th. Okay. To access the application, you can either click the link in the slides once they're posted online, or if you want to scan the QR code while we're talking right now, that'll take you to the online application as well. The application itself is fairly minimal. It just requires you to submit a resume or CV and then give us a couple of responses to some of the short answer questions that are part of the application form. And then based on that, we will go ahead and extend interview invites. Next slide. So next step after you apply is we will be doing virtual interviews through Zoom or Google Meet. If you're part of the early application process, those interviews will happen between November 13th and November 17th. If you don't get the application in by November 3rd, we're going to do interviews kind of on a rolling basis, right? And so we'll work with you once the application comes in to set up a time anywhere between December and early February. Once we've done the interview, we'll have another consultation process, and the early offers we intend to have made by November 20th, so in less than a month. But those, again, are just the early offers. we intend to have the full set of offers extended by February 9th. And that will hopefully lead to the full cohort. We're expecting to invite anywhere between 8 and 12 attendees from academia or industry. And so that's kind of the number of positions that we have. Okay. So I think that is all the information I've got at this point. But if there's any questions in the Q&A system that we haven't answered, Emily or Christine, feel free to let me know. Christine, are there any questions that we should answer live, or is everything taken care of?
Yeah, we just got one in chat that you might just want to review live real quick. The question was, how long are the positions for, and what is the pay scale?
Great. So the positions would be for the 8 weeks of the SCADS conference, right? So that would be Monday, June 3rd through Friday, July 26th. We have a stipend that we would pay for your participation of around $21,000 for that 8 weeks. That's something that's standard for all attendees. And so there wouldn't be necessarily like a scale on that, but that's the intention for the stipend.
Great. Yeah, we are all caught up. I don't see any other questions in chat at this time. Oh, sorry, one more just came in. Can the payments be made corp to corp or 1099?
We can do a number of different ways. It really depends on what's best for the attendee, right? So it's something we can talk about during the interview, but we can do them. We have done them corp to corp before. We've done them via 1099s. We can also do them as, potentially hiring people as temporary employees of NC State. So there's a variety of ways that we can do them. And so I think it's something that if there are particular circumstances that benefit one way or the other for you, we should just kind of talk through those during the interview.
We have another one for non-US participants. What is the situation with visas?
Right. Emily, would you be able to speak to that?
Yeah, so we have been, we've had a couple of conversations with our international office at NC State about the best way to do that. I would say if you can send an email, I can give a little bit more detail about like what that process looks like depending on your situation. But if you can, if you want to shoot me an email or the SCADS apply email, which I can drop in, not the chat. Let me see here. There we go. I'll just reply to your question with the SCADS apply email. You can shoot me an email and I can go through some of those options depending on what the situation is.
All right. Thanks, Emily. We have one other one. Afterward, what future opportunities may be available?
Sure. So obviously we appreciate SCADS attendees who are able to attend for more than one summer. So it is a thing where, we do like attendees who might be able to attend the next summer's SCADS. Additionally, some of our SCADS attendees will submit ideas for projects to work with LAS writ large. And that's something, it's helpful to have attended SCADS. It's not like a guarantee of this is a problem that came up during SCADS. I'd like to work on it for a full year as part of LAS. But it is something that, like, having that context can kind of help frame what problems are. So it doesn't guarantee anything in terms of, you will definitely be invited back for the next year's SCADS, or you'll definitely be able to do an LAS project. But those are two ways that we have continued to work with SCADS attendees, either as, attending the next year's SCADS, or working on a LAS project for the following year.
And there's a follow-up question. In summary, are the areas of interest to LES that will be funded?
Okay, so I'm not entirely sure if I understand the question, but I can try, and then you can tell me if this is answering it. So-
They added a clarification. What are the areas of interest to LAS that will be funded?
Right. So those are the areas that I went through in the beginning around, we're really interested in research around summarization. We're really interested in research around recommendation systems, and we're really interested in research around human-computer interaction. Specifically, we're interested in the areas of those research that, are aligned with the grand challenge, right? So, things like, how do you summarize articles in a TLDR in a way that does not introduce bias, that is tailored to a particular user, things like that. Okay. 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 Well, if there are no more open questions, I just wanted to take an opportunity to tell everyone thank you for joining us. Again, if you're interested in applying, please try and apply by the early application deadline on November 3rd. And we hope to talk to you more then. Other than that, thanks for coming, and take care.